By now, it had been 3 years of blood and sorrow. 3 years of absolute terror for a small village in southeastern France. And this was their time of reckoning. The beast has slaughtered over 100 souls. The king's men have all failed. The church prayed without giving much comfort to the bereaved. And still the beast stalks. But in 1767, a single shot will be thought to change everything. Or will it? Because when the guns fall silent, the real question remains: what monstrous truth lies buried in Gévaudan's soil? Welcome to Episode 4 of Storyteller's Hearth Fireside Tales production of The Beast of Gévaudan, The Hunter's Secret. In Episode 4, we explore where history, horror, and legend collide. Tonight, we reveal how a kingdom descended into paranoia, and how one desperate man did what no expert could. We will leave France as we explore the lingering questions the story raises and how it still affects modern culture. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment, and stay connected to keep the fire burning. Winter, 1767. The forests of Gévaudan stood silent under a shroud of frost, their skeletal branches clawing at a leaden sky. 3 years had passed since the first blood had been spilled. 3 years of screams in the night, graves dug, some too small, and of muskets fired at shadows. No one dared knock on a door at night. The beast had become more than a killer. It was a specter that haunted the very soul of France. In the villages, despair was festering like an open wound. Farmers continued to shutter their windows and barricade their doors. Crucifixes and holy pictures adorned every wall, while pitchforks, scythes, and sickles were still being kept handy. Mothers whispered prayers as they sent children to tend flocks, their eyes darting to the tree line. The death toll had climbed past 100, each victim bearing the same gruesome signature. Throats torn open, skulls crunched, and what was left of faces frozen in primal terror. Not a family in the area had been unaffected by tragedy. These were their sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, nephews and nieces, or cousins. The priests continued to speak of God's punishment, old women of long-forgotten curses, and the hunters, those few who still dared to hunt, of something far worse, something that perhaps cannot die. The king's men had arrived with their gleaming guns and unshakable arrogance, only to flee with their tails between their legs. First came Captain Duhamel and his dragoons, marching in perfect formation, their hunting parties meticulously organized with beaters and fences. Yet the beast outwitted them at every turn, disappearing into the misty bogs like a phantom. Duhamel claimed to have almost shot the beast on several occasions, but for the ineptitude of his guards and other incompetence in the hunting party. Then arrived the Denevals, famed wolf hunters from Normandy, who laughed at the peasants' fearful superstitions, until the beast slaughtered 2 girls in woods they had declared cleared. For 4 long months, they insisted their arcane methods, their prized trained dogs and secret techniques would soon bring the monster down. Instead, they left in disgrace and open ridicule, replaced by the king's own lieutenant of the hunt, François Antoine. Antoine, emboldened by the courage of the young Maid of Gévaudan, the king's own gun-bearer, fired the shot that was meant to end it all in 1765. A wolf's corpse was paraded through Versailles like a war trophy. Antoine was rewarded with gold, titles, and land. Yet, Gévaudan knew the truth. The killings never stopped. While Gévaudan bled, the court of Louis XV sipped champagne and turned its face away. The king dismissed reports of new attacks as peasant hysteria, and his ministers supposed the province was exaggerating to avoid taxes. Even Voltaire, ever the cynic, penned mocking letters about a kingdom undone by a stray dog. But in the frozen hamlets of Gévaudan, where the country air still carried the unique stench of the beast, the peasants were not yet laughing. The beast was rapidly slipping into legend now, its nature ever more embellished with each telling. Many witnesses recalled how it stood on its hind legs when it was about to strike, its eyes gleaming with something that looked eerily human. Wardens told of finding claw marks on church doors, as if it sought to defile sacred ground. And Jean Chastel, the pious hunter who still searched the woods, claimed the devil himself had sent it. By all accounts, he had started loading his musket with balls molded from a melted-down silver cross. As 1767 dawned, even the king could no longer ignore the truth. The beast was still out there, and it was growing bolder. That winter, a new order went out. Kill it at any cost. Chastel needed no urging. He had seen the beast's work firsthand. The gutted throats, the parents driven mad with grief. He knew it was no ordinary wolf as he stood in the snow outside his cottage that January morning, loading his gun with care. Jean Chastel was not like other men. For months, this hunter had moved through Gévaudan like a ghost, his Bible clutched in one hand, his musket in the other. While others slept behind locked shutters, Chastel kept vigil in the moonlit, near clearings where the beast was known to roam. He spoke little, but when he did, it was in murmured psalms or cryptic warnings of evil and the devil. As 1766 dawned, Jean Chastel was seen as a pious hunter who had always believed the beast was no natural foe. While others had chased shadows, he had prepared. As the preeminent hunters of the day sat in the taverns boasting of their celebrated exploits and explained how others in the hunting party had thwarted their chances to kill the beast, Chastel had been quietly examining the beast's behavior. That spring, Chastel did something no one else had tried. He waited, watched, and analyzed. He had combed the forest for months, not like others with battues or hounds, but alone with his musket and silver shot ready, his lips moving in silent prayer. He followed the beast from place to place until he knew the extent of its hunting grounds, looking for patterns. He stood on the blood-stained earth where children had died, and methodically studied each of the scenes, looking for clues for anticipating the beast's next move. The people watched him from afar, but so did the beast. And for the first time, Gévaudan dared to hope. The grizzled old marksman, who had always been considered odd, had lately grown more pious. But, as others were beginning to panic, Chastel had become, for a man of few words, even more quiet. For him, this was spiritual warfare that required supernatural tactics. Villagers speculated he had melted down sacramental silver to cast his now famous bullets for this werewolf-like creature from hell. After a lull in the beast's activity for most of the winter, they resumed in full force in the spring of 1767. The people were despairing. Pilgrimages increased to Notre-Dame de Beaulieu and other holy sites nearby for those seeking divine protection. Church services were full each Sunday, and sellers of relics and reliquaries were doing a roaring business. Everyone was faithfully saying their rosaries as they scurried about the streets and country lanes. Nobody stopped to speak to their neighbor as they hurried home. But it was all to no avail. In response to the king's command, on June 19th, the Marquis d'Apcher decided to conduct a hunt in some woods near Mount Mouchet, along with some local men, including the devout Jean Chastel. Later writers wrote, Chastel had loaded his rifle with one of his special bullets. Most chilling of all, he had waited behind while d'Apcher's men charged through the woods, stumbling after the sounds of the Marquis's bloodhounds, baying far in the distance. Chastel sat silent at the edge of a clearing, his gun across his knees, as if listening to the frenzied sounds of the distant hunt. It was as if he were anticipating the beast's moves. When asked why, he only quipped, "You don't hunt the devil like you would a boar." As he sat completely still, he began to hear the baying becoming louder. Soon he caught a glimpse of an enormous wolf-like creature short-trotting in his direction. He continued to sit completely still, letting it approach to within musket range. Chastel took careful aim and fired one shot in its direction, hitting it in its shoulder and knocking it to the ground. The beast showed obvious signs of injury. As it was struggling to get back up, it was ambushed by Marquis Jean-Joseph d'Apcher's hounds and killed in an awful sound of baying, screams, and screeches. It had been taken down by Chastel's silver bullet. A later historian, quoting oral tradition, wrote, "When the beast arrived, Chastel was quietly saying the litanies of the Holy Virgin. Afterward, he closed his book, placed his horn-rimmed glasses in his pocket, and took his rifle, and instantly killed the beast, which had been waiting for him." At that moment, Jean Chastel instinctively knew the ordeal was over, and the woods seemed to know it too. Not a bird sang for a few moments. Jean Chastel received 72 livres reward from the king on September 9th. The corpse of the beast lay sprawled across a rough wooden table in the Marquis d'Apcher's estate, its massive limbs stiff with rigor mortis in the cold air of the hall. Around it, a restless crowd had gathered. Villagers with hateful eyes, soldiers timidly gripping their muskets as if it might still pose a threat, and minor nobles murmuring behind gloved hands of how they almost shot it themselves. After 3 years of terror, the creature that had stalked Gévaudan was finally dead. Yet as they examined its twisted form, the answers they sought only slipped further from their grasp. The king and his nobles had spent a considerable amount of their fortune and resources in hunting this scourge. Dr. Boulanger, the king's surgeon, leaned over the carcass, his fingers parting the beast's lips to reveal jagged yellow fangs. "Too large to be a wolf," he muttered, shaking his head as he measured the paw prints against his charts. The gathered men exchanged uneasy glances. If it is not a wolf, then what is it? For some experts, its physiological features suggested a monstrous hybrid. A wolf crossed with a mastiff, bred for savagery. Others pointed to its curved claws that more resembled a cat's than belonging to any canine, or the stripes that shimmered across its back. A huntsman, his face lined with old scars, swore it reminded him more of a hyena he had once seen in the nobleman's private menagerie. The peasants needed no measurements to confirm what they already knew. "Its eyes," murmured a survivor, her voice trembling, "were a man's eyes." The old fears flared anew. Then someone announced they had found human teeth in the beast's stomach, and soon the word werewolf mingled through the crowd. In the shadows of his estate, the Marquis d'Apcher's servants traded darker tales, that their master had fed his enemies to the beast, that it was trained to come when he whistled, and that its collar bore the Marquis's crest. Although the nobles pretended not to hear, these accusations have clung to the air like smoke until this day. The king had declared the beast dead once before, in 1765, after François-Antoine's celebrated kill. Yet the attacks continued. That December, a shepherd's throat had been torn miles from where Antoine's wolf had fallen. In 1766, near Saint-Alban, fresh tracks too large for any known wolf were found in the snow. Had Antoine missed his mark? Could the nobility be trusted to tell them the truth? Or had another creature risen to take the beast's place? Their stories never aligned. Some survivors spoke of a striped back, while others swore the beast was solid gray. Attacks were reported on the same day in villages up to 50 miles apart. A woodsman near Langogne claimed to have seen two large shadowy figures moving together through the trees in 1766. When pressed for answers, the king's men inexplicably destroyed the records and silenced questions. The beast was dead. France needed no more monsters. But in Gévaudan, where the wind still carried the scent of blood, the people knew better. Some wounds never close. Some questions are never answered. The silver bullet that killed the beast did not kill the legend. If anything, it immortalized the monster. The story of Gévaudan's nightmare spread like wildfire through 18th-century Europe, igniting a werewolf panic from the Black Forest to the Scottish Highlands. In Germany, peasants began carrying silver-tipped staffs, convinced shapeshifters were walking among them. Parisian broadsheets printed lurid woodcuts of the beast, its jaws dripping with the blood of virgins. The church conducted exorcisms on suspected lycanthropes, their howls echoing through monastery halls. When the rationalism of the Enlightenment clashed with the terror of Gévaudan, art became the battleground. The Wolf Leader, written in 1857 by Alexandre Dumas, was a darkly whimsical tale in which a poor shoemaker, Thibault, struck a Faustian bargain with a sinister wolf leader, gaining supernatural powers at the cost of his soul. Centuries later, the movie The Brotherhood of the Wolf, 2001, a stylish French historical action horror film blending mystery, martial arts, and political intrigue, was about two men who hunted the beast uncovered a conspiracy involving the aristocracy. The 2022 movie, The Cursed, is a gothic horror film that reimagines the Beast of Gévaudan as an ancient curse that transforms a community into bloodthirsty werewolf-like creatures. Then, in Patricia Briggs' Hunting Ground, the Beast of Gévaudan was revealed to be Jean Chastel himself. The truth had become a canvas, and every era has painted its own monster. In 2008, a team of forensic scientists petitioned to test the beast's alleged remains, stored in a Versailles archive. What they found, or rather didn't find, deepened the mystery. No DNA match. The few surviving bone fragments were too degraded, but their structure suggested a wolf-dog hybrid. The skull had vanished. Last documented in 1810, rumors swirled that a nobleman had stolen it as a trophy. Psychologists offered another theory without explaining the dead children: mass hysteria. The attacks had coincided with famine and feudal oppression, and perhaps Gévaudan needed a monster to blame. And criminologists offer something darker? A few have noted eerie parallels to modern-day serial killers. The beast's hunting grounds matched patterns of a single, mobile predator. The legend of the Beast of Gévaudan has fascinated historians for centuries, with most accounts attributing the brutal killings to a mysterious, wolf-like creature. However, a compelling alternative theory suggests that the true monster was not an animal at all, but rather Jean Chastel, the very man credited with slaying the beast. A closer examination of the facts reveals disturbing patterns that may point to Chastel as the mastermind behind the attacks, using the myth of a supernatural beast to conceal his own crimes. One of the most suspicious details is the abrupt halt in killings during Chastel's brief imprisonment in 1765 for unrelated crimes. The strikes only resumed after his release, which may imply his direct involvement. Furthermore, Chastel was known to own a large, ferocious dog-wolf cross that he had trained for hunting. Could this animal have been his weapon, unleashed upon victims before he staged the scenes to mimic a wild beast's savagery? Witnesses reported that the creature seemed unnaturally resilient, surviving multiple gunshots, a detail that aligns with claims that the beast wore boar skin armor, something no natural animal would do, but a man certainly could. Even more damning is the nature of the victim's wounds. Many were found decapitated, a mutilation far more consistent with human brutality than with animal predation. Wolves do not cleanly remove heads, but an axe or sword in the hands of a murderer does. The most chilling twist, however, may lie in the death of one of the beast's final victims, the young daughter of one of Chastel's own friends. If Chastel was indeed the orchestrator of these killings, this murder may have been a turning point. Had he lost control of his own monstrosity? Did the death of a child he knew force him to confront the horror of what he had done? Soon after, Chastel famously killed the beast with a silver bullet, a theatrically symbolic gesture that cemented his place in legend as a hero. But was this merely a calculated way to end the slaughter before suspicion turned toward him? In the end, the beast of Gévaudan may have been neither wolf nor demon, but merely a man who wore the skin of a monster, until even he could no longer bear the weight of his own atrocities. By staging the beast's death, Jean Chastel may have ensured that the truth died with it, leaving behind only a haunting legend and a question. Was the hunter, all along, the true beast? Drive through the area today, and reminders of the beast is everywhere. Statues of it loom over village squares, frozen mid-snarl. Museums display relics, a claw or a fang, all unverified. Tourists hike the beast trails, their guides spinning tales where the trees grow thick. But talk to the locals after dusk, and you'll notice no one ventures into Montmouchet's woods at night. Farmers still find sheep ripped apart, though wolves have been extinct here for a century. Old women hang iron crosses over their doors, muttering about the one that got away. Is the beast's latest victim a hiker that vanished near Sogne d'Auvers in 2019? The search party found only his camera, the last photo being a blurred shape of a mouth with many teeth. Authorities called it a bear attack, but the people of Gévaudan are not so sure. And so, the legend of the beast of Gévaudan passes into history, but its mystery lingers in the shadows. Thank you for joining us around the fire for this chilling journey through one of France's darkest tales. Your support fuels these stories, and we're just getting started. If you loved unraveling this nightmare, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep the home fires burning. Until our next tale, keep a lantern lit, for the night is full of secrets.